To all my moms moving on, I have something amazing for you. If you're ready to move on from your engagement ring, the experts at Worthy can help you turn it into cash, fast and risk-free. Worthy does all the work, and their competitive auctions get you the best deal possible. Over 45,000 people have already moved on with Worthy. Are you ready to move on too? Visit worthy.com/moms to get an extra $100 when your jewelry sells for over $1,500. That's worthy.com/moms for a special bonus offer just for the Moms Moving On community.
You know, ironically, choosing a divorce lawyer is just like choosing a spouse. And I know that that's kind of a crazy thing to say, given where you're coming from and where you're going, but you are about to lay your entire life at someone's feet.
Welcome back to another episode of Moms Moving On. I'm so excited to be here with you because I have a fierce female attorney on with us today. She's a litigator from Chicago, a city I love very much. And she's going to talk to us all about what you need to really look out for when deciding whether an attorney is the right one for you and what questions to ask. This is huge because who you choose to represent you in your divorce process is going to make or break the next, I don't know, however many years of your life. Hailee Zabrin is with us, and she believes the practice of family law is all about understanding and analyzing the financial nuances of each case, understanding the personalities involved, and developing a dynamic, holistic legal strategy based on those facts. She works for Berger Schatz. She's a champ. She's won Best Lawyers, Ones to Watch, all of these things. She's a rising star. Her list goes on and on. Hailee, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm a big fan.
Well, I am a fan of anybody who is helping people get through this very ugly process in a helpful and strategic way without inciting more drama. Tell us about your foray into family law, if you will.
Yeah. So for some reason, maybe it was because of the glamorization of this on television, I always wanted to be a divorce lawyer. And so at the time when I was coming out of law school, which was 2009, everyone was getting laid off. There were no jobs. And so I was in court one day, externing for a judge, and like all these amazing, powerful female lawyers were coming into the courtroom. They were dressed well, they were respected. And one after the next was, I'm from Berger Schatz, I'm representing this person, I'm from Berger Schatz. And I was like, I want to be one of those people. So I reached out to one of the women I saw in court. She met me for coffee. She helped me get my foot in the door. I come from no lawyers in my family, no connections. And so I really kind of kicked down that door myself. And I've been there from the beginning of my career since I'm a law student.
Wait, you manifested this totally. Like you set I really respect this because I'm very much like, once I get a goal in my mind, it's happening. And that's really inspiring. And not only that, the fact that there was a woman there willing to reach out her hand and take you in and help you. That's really nice. That could be the whole podcast right there. I love to hear that. Yeah. What a great story.
It really was. And they just lifted me up and kept promoting me and hired me as a lawyer. Then I became a partner. And now I hire our law clerks and mentor them and young lawyers.
And okay. So for those of you who don't know, she's not just working for like some, little attorney somewhere. This is like a major law firm in Chicago. Anybody in the family law industry has heard of this law firm. And so it's no small potatoes. This is really impressive stuff. But, being that you've gotten to the place that you're at, I'm sure you've seen a hell of a lot of ugliness over the years and can really help steer people away from making bad choices when it's time to pick a lawyer for this process.
Absolutely.
All right. So tell us, like, any horror stories.
I mean, in terms of horror stories, I would just say that, ironically, choosing a divorce lawyer is just like choosing a spouse. And I know that that's kind of a crazy thing to say, given where you're coming from and where you're going, but you are about to lay your entire life at someone's feet. You're going to tell them your deepest, darkest secrets, your biggest fears. A lot of times when people walk into your office, they are gutted. They're at the bottom. And you are fine. You're walking into a room where you maybe have 45 minutes to an hour with someone, and you're like, can I trust you with my entire life, my
For
kids,
sure. For
my
sure. You're
family,
everything. Here is
everything?
all my vulnerability and everything that's important to me on a silver platter, a very
Mm-hmm.
emotional silver platter. Help.
Yes. And so what happens in that initial consultation and what happens in your research leading up to that point, and even after you've met with maybe one person, is what I find is the absolute most important, because there's a lot of smart lawyers out there, right? We've all gone to law school. Being smart, that's the easy part. But it's the emotional intelligence. It's the connection. It's someone who asks you the questions. What do you want out of this process? What are your goals out of this process? And they want to collaborate with you. They want to understand your goals and values while you're moving into this next stage of life. And that is the intangible piece. That's not just knowing the law and being able to apply it. This is not one size fits all. This is every single person's life is unique to them, and the approach to your case needs to follow that same trajectory.
And of course, taking into account the needs of the children, which is
Yep.
not, like you said, everybody can go to law school and get a law degree, but where are you bringing in that humanity and focusing on the needs of who's going to be affected the most, right? And
Absolutely.
that for me, having gone through the process, would be something I would recommend right off the bat. Like, if you meet with an attorney and they don't ask you, tell me what you want for your kids, how are your kids dealing with all of this? That's a huge red flag for me.
Huge. And, so how do you qualify the lawyer, right? I mean, think about the questions they ask you. When you walked into the room, was one of the questions they asked, are you sure that divorce is right for you right now? Have you
Mhm.
exhausted every possibility? This is your biggest life decision, other than probably marrying the person, right? Other than choosing your spouse, is deciding to get divorced. So there's no takebacks. After you file, yes, you can get back together, but it's a blemish that's going to exist. So did the person ask you, have you exhausted everything? Have you gone to counseling? Is this it? Are you sure? Right? Not pushing you to get a divorce. So that's a big piece for me, at least, that I find that most people just assume that people are there, and then they're pressuring you, and you need to be ready. You need to be committed. You need to be engaged. So that is a big piece that I think that you should definitely look for when you're interviewing someone.
Yeah, I never even really thought of that, but being pressured by an attorney to like go through with the process and file, my goodness, like how horrible. You talk about assumptions. Another assumption that everybody has, and I get DMs and texts and emails all day, every day. Hey, so and so is getting divorced, or my friend or my cousin is getting divorced, and they want a shark. They want the worst of the worst
Yeah.
attorney. And I'm like, no, they don't actually. And let
No.
me tell you why. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want someone who's gonna, smell blood in the water. People are vulnerable, and what you want is you want a lawyer to find out what forum is best for you. Court should be a last and absolute last case, worst case scenario. Nobody wants to see the inside of a courtroom, because the second that you hire that shark, once you get the temperature up in a case, it is very hard to bring it back down. And when temperatures are high, emotions are already high. When temperatures are high and people are anxious and on the defense, you can't think clearly, you can't find good solutions, and your judgment is ultimately clouded. Also, there's enough personalities in a divorce and enough conflict. Your lawyer should be well respected by other lawyers and by judges, not a
By
shark.
judges. Yes.
Yes, not a shark, not someone who's focused on winning. There is no winning in a divorce, right? It's someone who is well respected, who is not going to make your process harder. And so we get a bad rap in our field no matter what, but the shark is not always the best case, because that could make your case more contentious, and it just loses sight of what is the ultimate goal, which is to put two people in a separate place, to have their second act in life, and to move forward with as few scars as possible.
Right. And
So
I, like you said, it's the most emotional time and you're already feeling emotionally abandoned and alone. So when you have an attorney who smells blood in the water and is going to come in and say all the right things, just
yeah.
like a new relationship, the wrong person to date might do, it can actually feel comforting, like, oh, this person has my back. But what you have to think about is not the short term. It's, knowing that the uglier the divorce process, the worse off your kids are going to be in the long term, the more trauma they're going to have to endure and then work through in therapy one day as adults. So
Yeah.
that's something that I always caution against. But I am no lawyer, you are. So give us more. What else do you think people should be looking for?
I think that someone should also be looking for someone who is going to challenge the things that you tell them in the initial meeting, right? You don't want someone who's going to tell you everything you want to hear. You want someone who's going to tell you the mixed bag, the good, the bad, the ugly, the possible under the law, the not possible under the law. You don't want someone who's going to overpromise you results. They need to manage your expectations because that sets you up for success. So did you hear things that you don't want to hear? The answer to that question is yes. That's a good consultation. Nobody can promise you the stars, the moon, anything, because if you do end up seeing the inside of a courtroom, which you really hope you never do in a divorce, you don't know what the person in the black row behind the bench is going to do. Nobody does.
Right. Right. And that's the thing. It's like people don't realize that when you do end up in court, no matter, your lawyer may tell you, oh, whenever I go to court, I win. Well, there is no winning, like
Right.
you said. And also,
Mm-hmm.
once you're in court, you're leaving so much in the hands of a judge, a person who doesn't know you outside of this
Yep.
paperwork that they've now read about you. And that's a really scary thing to have to do.
It is the scariest. And that's why another big piece, as we kind of touched on when we talked about the sharks, is did your lawyer talk to you about all the possible forums that you could deal with your divorce? Did they talk about, mediation, arbitration? Did they speak to you about, when you might have to go to court, how you can keep yourself out of court? Did they talk to you about the fact that, oh, maybe before we pay a third party mediator, the lawyers can try and settle your case and figure it out at a less costly, see what we can knock out that we can agree to before then we bring a mediator or someone into the case so that we make their list smaller and we make it more economical for everybody. All the possible solutions outside of court should be discussed with you at your consultation.
I want to ask you your thoughts on, because I'm in like a rabbit hole obsession right now with collaborative divorce. I'm taking a
Yeah.
class on it in my master's program right now. And my former co-parenting therapist is my professor, and she's like a wizard with all the collab divorce stuff. What are your thoughts on it? Is this something that you guys do at Berger Schatz?
It is. We have several lawyers at our law firm who are trained in collaborative divorce. Like you said, it's a course, it's a certification. I think that any alternative to going to court is one that should be explored. I think that your lawyer should tell you what happens in collaborative divorce, what you could expect, what the difference between collaborative divorce, mediation, arbitration, all the possible solutions should be discussed with you. I'm a big fan of anything that keeps people out of court.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how, I do think collectively, I don't know, maybe it's just my perspective or my mindset. I do think collectively we're moving away a little bit from, the knockdown, drag out fight of divorce that they portray on TV or in the movies or that people associate with divorce and really just trying to find a more peaceful way.
I agree. And I think that in terms of at least where we are in Chicago, COVID really did a lot of great things for our legal system and some not so great things. So some not so great things is people who were set for trial or things that were happening in the early or part of 2020, everything got pushed out. The calls were very backlogged and we're still feeling the fallout from that. beneficially, though, Zoom court came into our lives. And so the things that we used to have to go to court for and run around to every courtroom in multiple floors of the Daily Center downtown or in the courthouse in Lake County, and we'd have to go to a million different courtrooms and charge our clients for all that time of sitting and waiting, that's been eliminated because a lot of courts now have the Zoom and you can log in and out, and it's very economical and it's very fast.
I'm laughing because my husband's a judge, and in 2020, like, was just here judging in his robe in like our home office with like his shorts on. And it just, it became such a norm, and it's something you would never think could happen. And, you know, he was desperate to get back in the courtroom. And when he could, it was, you know, it was very, very interesting to not have him here in his robe all day.
Yeah.
So what kinds of questions do you think, you know, once we find somebody and they're not just telling us what we want to hear, but necessarily what we need to hear?
Yeah.
What do you think is, for someone with children, especially, what questions come to mind for you?
So the questions that come to mind for me is, what experience do you have with cases that are similar to mine? Right? I mean, let's say you come in and you have a spouse who's abusive, or you just have someone who travels all the time, or, you know, one person is living 35 minutes away and I'm living here. How do we handle that? You want someone who has experience. Again, there's no one size fits all. There is an undercurrent. You know, that when it comes to kids, there's a lot of different issues, and you want someone who's going to be able to help you creatively think outside the box and come up with solutions for parenting time, for decision making, for relocation, for any of those issues. You want someone who has a myriad of experience across a lot of different issues to be able to counsel you as to all your alternatives, because you're looking to them for the solutions, but they also need to listen to what solutions you want so that they can implement them into whatever parenting plan you're going to end up with.
And what do you think are some, you know, people talk about picking their battles, but when emotions are high, people get stuck on small things and end up fighting over things that years down the line really won't matter. What would you advise people against in terms of like getting stuck on in the divorce process, like, you know, fighting over a parakeet or something? Like, what is it that you see that you would advise moms, especially, to just let it go?
Yeah, I think you have to look at every single case holistically. You need to focus on what you're getting more than what you're not getting, because a good settlement or a good resolution of a case is one where nobody's happy. And that's because everybody had to give something that they wanted, and that makes it fair, right? Nobody gets everything that they want. Now, that's not to say if one person's completely unreasonable, you know, sometimes those people get a lot less of what they want. But focusing on making a list. These are the most important things for me, and really trying to get that number one thing.
Yeah.
And maybe you trade 2 and 3 for 6 and 7 on your list, but really focusing on the number one thing that's the most important for you, and trying to get that, or as much of that as possible, and focusing on the fact of the glass half full. I got this instead of I didn't get this.
That's great, because when I work with clients and I'm coaching them through their process and they come to me and they're like, I want this and I want that, and I create, ironically, like a wedding cake, 3 tiers, right? The bottom, the foundation, I always say, put 2 things in there. And if you get one of them, you're lucky. Those are the most important. And then the rest is more like decorative fluff. If you get it, great. But if you know that it's not the most important to you, it's worth negotiating, right? Because you need some leverage. And I think that's really great advice. Like, no one's ever going to get everything they want, just like you didn't get everything you want in the marriage either.
Exactly. But building off that too is a smart lawyer will help you also analyze, this is your spouse's wedding cake. We know that these 2 things at the bottom are the most important, or we think that they are. And if one of those things is not that important to you, then you use that to negotiate, right? Maybe you hold on to those things until you've gotten your big thing, and then you let it go. It's all part of knowing yours and anticipating theirs. So that is another huge part of creatively thinking when you're negotiating and trying to get what you want.
You must be so good at this. I would love like the opportunity to like watch you in action or, but I have no doubt it would all be amazing. And this has been really informative. What other last bits of advice would you have for a mom who is just starting the process?
I would ask, I would really also listen to what the lawyer asks me. Like, you want to get to know them. Okay. So this is someone who you're co-pilots, right? So you want them to share, you want to share, and you want to connect beyond just their divorce checklist, right? What are your interests? What kinds of things? How's your family? What were your parents like? Because that helps your lawyer understand you as a person much deeper than just a checklist. So, and you want to know your lawyer too. This is your battle mate. You guys are going to, at some points, you're going to be in the trenches together. You're going to be celebrating big things. You're going to be laughing and hugging, and you're going to be crying and in a ball on the floor. I mean, not always, but a lot of times. And so you need to have someone who is your person, for lack of a better word. They need to be your person. And so listening to the questions and also making sure you ask them questions about them. What do you know about your lawyer? You really want to connect.
That's really great advice. And I agree. I mean, this is a very, very intimate process. And there will be ugly tears and there will be happy tears. And you want to make sure that the person handing you the tissue is someone you really can trust and put the lives of you and your children in their hands. It's a big deal. So Hailee, thank you for this. You're a Chicago superstar. Where can everybody learn more about you or get in touch with you if they'd like your help in this process?
Yeah. So they can find me on our website. It's burgershats.com. And my email is hzabrin@burgershats.com. It's all on our website. And I would love to hear from you.
Yes, we will link all of it. If you have any questions and you are in the greater Chicago area, please reach out. This woman's a wealth of knowledge. I can't help you with the legal things, but if you have any other questions, you know where to find me. info@momsmovingon.com, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.